The movie opens with a young boy named Douglas and his family vacationing at their beach house. He sees his friend Carson there, who assures him that he will have a good time with the girls. Douglas returns home, and as he looks out the window, he sees the Harper family entering the house. Next door, a stunning woman catches his eye, and he notices her look. Douglas goes out with his friend and sees the girls by the lake. When he gets back home, his father calls him and introduces him to Mr. Harper, the same wealthy neighbor that Douglas had seen. Mr. Elliot Harper enjoys the water, so he hires him to take care of his boat and get everything ready for tomorrow. In the following scene, when Douglas checks on the boat, he sees Mrs. Harper emergency from the water in a stylish swimsuit. Meanwhile, Mr. Harper comes and gives him an overview of his responsibilities. The following day, Doug was working when he heard a scream and hurried to the scene. The spider on the dashboard seemed to frighten Mrs. Harper, which Doug helps her remove. After that, Doug fixes the stuck wiper. Doug walks to the bar with his friend where they are working, and he tells him about today's events. That night, Doug returns. He sees Mrs. Harper. She introduces herself as Lena and asks him to help her get inside the house because she forgot his key. Doug then wraps his shirt around a rock, breaks a window, and opens the door for Lena. At the house, both look attracted to one another, and they end up having passionate romantic sex. When they wake up in the morning on their bed, they resolve to keep this a secret. Doug goes swimming with his friend Carson, who questions him about not answering the phone last night. Doug avoids the question and doesn't tell Carson the truth. Mr. Harper then phones Doug angrily, fearing that Doug will learn about his relationship with Lena. Doug goes to the location and discovers that Mr. Harper was only trying to point out a few mistakes. Doug finds a tattoo on Lena's body and asks if she's ever dated a girl. Lena replies that she has, and that the girl was her first love. Later that night, Lena contacts Doug from the hospital center and says her husband Peter wants to get a divorce. When Doug goes there, Lena tells him that her husband is dangerous and that he can do anything. The next day, Doug is called apprehensively and asked to come see her as soon as possible. Doug goes there and Lena shows him her husband's body. Lena claims she was defending herself that this happened, and Lena explains that her husband's family are dangerous, which is why he can tell them. Doug attempts to comfort her until he finds a way out. Eventually, Doug places Harper's body in the boat. A beach guard sees Doug, but Doug gives him the erroneous impression about Mr. Harper. So Doug leaves the following morning. Police discover Mr. Harper's body in his boat, and they notify Lena of this development. Doug learns at the bar from Sheriff Jack that an insurance agent is going to look into Mr. Harper's death. The insurance agent Alvarez speaks with the sheriff, but the sheriff treats her harshly because he believes she is new. After some time, Jack consents to let Alvarez question him in his office. Lena, the first person to be questioned, gives a thorough and accurate account of the incident. Meanwhile, police investigations continue until the Coast Guard identifies a suspect that evening, at which point Alvarez goes back to Harper's house and starts his investigation, discovering a broken window. The insurance agent questions Doug and he shares a story similar to Lana. The following day, Doug learns from the beach guard that Lena was speaking to a stranger and saying that she killed her husband. Doug approaches Lena to get an explanation, but she says she was forced to say that. Doug then goes back home, sees Alvarez again, and takes samples from him to continue his research. Doug tells his friend the truth, and Carson tells him to go tell the sheriff about everything. Doug goes to see the sheriff, but on his way, Doug gets a message from Lena, telling him to come and see her in boat. Doug goes to see Lena and they start talking, but Lena rips off her clothes and pretends that Doug is beating her. At that point, sheriff arrived and arrested Doug. Doug tries to explain everything to the sheriff, who grants him a chance to go on a bicycle since he believes Doug is innocent. When Doug gets to Lena's house, Alvarez arrives. She sees Doug and asks to see the phone. When Alvarez sees the document on the phone, she realizes Doug is innocent and tells Doug to come with him. She calls out to Lena and ordered her to come with her. Then she calls the sheriff and puts a handcuff on Doug and told him to wait for the sheriff to come. When they get to the car, he sees a tattoo on Alvarez's foot, and this is where Doug remembers Lena's words about her first love, and he realizes that the whole story was pre-planned to catch him. Lena puts down the phone and she leaves with Alvarez. They kissed on their way. Evidence in the phone reduces Doug's punishment, and he was released from prison after a while. Please subscribe for more movie